Hello everyone, this is John Adams and I'm going to go over the final skills test with you today because I know there's some of you that are not really sure how to do what I'm asking you to do on this skills test. It's all the things that we have gone over, especially during the assignment, the composite image assignment, and some of the things that we went over in the movie poster assignment. So you should know all these, but I'm going to go over them anyway. So just remember, I'm going to move this my canvas over here. Just remember to download the background, TIFF, the balloon basket, the dragon, the woman, and then there's a final completed. So that's a JPEG image of the final, what it should look like when you're completed with this assignment, which gives you a really great idea of what I'm expecting. So if you open these files, make sure that you open them all, and I'm going to go ahead and open these with Photoshop. And here they all are. So the one that says final right here, this is what it should look like when you're done. So there's a few things to do. So there's the background, which is right here. Now you don't have to do anything as far as sizing is concerned, but you can see the difference in the color compared to this, the final, and this one. So it will need to get adjusted. So there's quite a few things that you need to do. So first of all, open this image, and then you can start making adjustments to your image first. So what I would do is go ahead and start with layers, and I'm going to make layers a little smaller here. Then after you have your layers open, is you can either right click on this to duplicate the layer, or you can drag the layer down into the new layer icon. So I'll just right click, duplicate. Okay, you can call it whatever you want, it doesn't really matter. This is the duplicate image that you're going to be working on, and if you do any touch-ups or any of that, eventually you'll be using this to sharpen your image. So first of all, what we want to do is go to either curves or levels. I'm going to go ahead and go to levels, and then I'm going to go ahead and set the highlights and shadows, which you guys learned in the very first assignment. So holding the Option key on a Mac or Alt key on Windows, pulling this over, and you can't really see too much on here, so I'm going to pull it over a little bit more, and you can see where there's some light specks, and I think I need to move my layers over so you can see that better. But you can see where there's some picking out the lightest area in your image, which would be back in here, which is great. And then do the same, hold the Option key on a Mac or Alt on Windows and drag the shadows icon, and then you can see the shadows. So you don't really want more shadows than that. That's picking the darkest spot in your image, which is down in here. Then you want to adjust the midtones. So adjust the midtones to brighten this up a little bit. It should be about like that. It looks very nice. If you go too far, you're going to overexpose it. You go too dark, it's going to be too dark. So try to set something in between. Okay, so that's the first thing you want to do. I don't think we need any color balance or hue or saturation on this. We'll need that on some of the other images. So the other thing is to go ahead and make a selection. I go to the dragon file, go to this one, make a selection of this, and then do the select and mask. So as you make the selection, I'll go ahead and go to the quick selection tool up here, and then let's zoom in a little bit. You can see this. So I'm going to go ahead and select as much as I can. Now there is this little area down here that you need to get to. Now you probably, if you want to be picky, you can get rid of the selection in here, but we can either erase that or select that out afterwards. It doesn't have to be done now because this should see through into the background. Okay, so now we have that selection. Then when you do that, we want to use select and mask. So in select and mask, we're going to go ahead and use the smart radius. Now you can put this on a darker background or you can put it on a white background. So if you put it on a white background, you can increase the whiteness on the edge and you can see a little bit more what you're doing. But it doesn't have to be that way. So on the smart edges, you might be able to see a little bit, not much. Smoothing, we're not going to need that because it's pretty smooth. Feathering, yes, you want to go ahead and feather this some. So You may need to change this later, but for right now, that's as good as we want, not up to about 2 pixels. Contrast or shift the edge, you might be able to shift the edge slightly on this. It's hard to see it because it's so dark right now, and we could have probably lightened it ahead of time with adjustments, but we're just making the selection. So all we want to do is make the selection, and then what we can do is go ahead and output it as a selection and then copy and paste it. So I'm going to go ahead and say output to selection, say OK. There's my selection. Go under edit, copy. Then I'm going to go into the background image that we want to put it into and edit, paste. Okay, so there he is. He's not facing the right direction. If you see on the finals, he's not in the right direction. So that's one thing that we can do real easy. So if we go into edit, transform, you can go down to the bottom, and not the very bottom, but flip horizontally and flip him. Okay, so some of the other things we need to do is we need to make some adjustments to it. So the first thing I would do is probably levels. Now when you do levels right now, it's not clipped. It's going to affect everything below it, which means it'll affect everything, the background and everything. So you don't want that. You want to actually use the clipping icon right here, and then you can make adjustments to it. Okay. Now the color is not going to be right because of the fact that you need to do some other adjustments to it. So get it as close as you can with the midtones, and then you can go into hue and saturation. Make sure that that one is clipped too. You can see in the layers, when I move this over, this is the levels that I created, and see how it creates this little arrow. This means that it affects everything. So if I do this, it affects the whole background and everything. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure it's clipped by going to this little icon here, and then you can shift the colors a little bit. If you want to brighten the colors, there's a little bit more brightness. If you want it to be lighter or darker, that's pretty good actually right there. It's not bad. Okay, you may want to use color balance on it too, and if you do that, you know, those are some of the requirements that you should be doing on here. Just make sure you clip it also. Okay, and you can see the little arrow that goes on there when I do that. So if you want a little redder, if you want a little bluer, green, no, we don't want green. That doesn't help. Maybe a little bit bluer would be beneficial. That looks pretty good. So you notice the color looks really fairly nice now. Okay, and then I'm going to turn this off. Okay. So that's one thing you can do. Then the other thing is we'll minimize properties and move this over kind of where it belongs. So you can take a look on here. I have it way over in the corner. And I have it smaller too. So if you size it, make sure you hold the shift key down when you size it. Put it closer to the corner. That's pretty good. And you can see it still needs some more color adjustment to it. And I need to move it over here. When you do move it, just make sure you check that you commit whatever you've done to it. Okay, and then there's the final. Mine's a little bit smaller. Looks like it needs to be a little brighter. So we might have to adjust that up a little bit more. But we'll get to that in a second. So don't forget when you're doing this to go ahead and make sure you save before you go too far along. So save or save as, and save it to your desktop or to wherever you're working with the actual files that you're working on. So I'm going to go ahead and save as. I'm going to call this I'm going to call it just a sample. I'm just going to name it for myself, balloon skills test, or I can just say skills test. And you can save it. Make sure I'm saving it skills test, but make sure down at the very bottom that you change this to Photoshop. You don't have to, but that's better if you keep it as Photoshop. And then save it into a place that you know you want to actually find it, like on your desktop would be good. And then you may want to, in levels, you may want to go in here and you can make some adjustments to it. I'm going to pull this off to the side. So instead of just doing it in hue and saturation and color balance, you should be able to work on the different channels if you want to, by creasing. If you want to crease the reds, if you want to go into green. Of course, we don't really want green. We want kind of the opposite of green. Blue, and only working in the midtones. So you can get this pretty bright if you want to by just adjusting this fairly nicely, and then you may want to go back to the RGB setting and then set the brightness on here. You may want to set it fairly high. Okay, so you can do almost everything. You can see the hue and saturation I changed a little bit, color balance just a little bit, but hardly anything. It was mainly the levels. Okay, so that's the best thing to do on here. All right, so one of the other things that you're going to need to do is find the basket. So in here we have, I'm going to move this over, and we have the balloon basket is right here. So on the balloon basket, this is another one that you're going to have to make a selection on. So the quick selection tool is the best to use on this. But that's going to be on the next step for the tutorial. I'm going to stop this at 11 minutes and then we'll go on to the next tutorial, which will go over how to make the selections on the basket and the woman, adding shadows and so on and so forth for this assignment or for this skills test.